Okay, hey everybody, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a really cool review for you guys from the brand RZE. A little about them. They're a newer micro brand upstart where the founder was actually a key designer from another popular micro brand and has since set out to create his own new vision from the ground up. Now, in terms of type of watch, this is a classic field watch. Some key characteristics and design language. You're looking for something within this space. Of course, you're going to find a modest size that doesn't get in the way of your tactical gear. You're going to have Arabic numerals, typically with a 12 and 24-hour scale over a black or cream dial. This is their Urbanist in the Prairie Tan Stars Special Edition colorway. Now, this particular model is actually a modern interpretation of the classic field watch. The Urbanist features their signature angular design language in a compact, versatile 36mm case size. And it actually does use a solar cell in the rehaut that enables the use of a solid dial, as you can see here. The Stars badging is actually a helicopter air ambulance service providing the best hope for patients in a worst case scenario in rural, remote, and in indigenous communities across Western Canada. These go for $279 direct, and 15% of each sale will actually be donated to help fund the thousands of life-saving missions that Stars undergoes every year. And yeah, I'm typically not huge into smaller watches. I'm typically not huge into quartz watches, but the combination of a quartz watch that's solar powered but doesn't have any noticeable solar panels or anything like that, I thought was quite intriguing. And honestly, the aesthetic here does remind me of a lot of the old little Timex field watches that I used to use when I was serving in the Marine Corps. So this definitely has more of a function over form style. But if you have a smaller wrist, this might be just what you're looking for. But, for those of you with more average or larger than average size wrists, this is probably going to be a little bit polarizing for many folks. But with that said, I'm really excited to share with you. So let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys. So, again, the cool thing about RZE is that, yeah, they are a full brand, right? They're not just a bunch of products that are just grouped together. They come out with cool stuff. Like, check this out. Nice titanium, little clip there, nice recesses, little bottle opener. This thing is cool, right? Like, you can absolutely use this for your kit and your gear and secure it. They've even worked with brands like Big Idea Designs to create some cool little EDC click pens. And I like that. I like that, again, they're a full brand. They're not just a product company. So here is the mission patch that comes with this, and I think it's very, very cool, guys. Of course, this isn't for everybody, but for those of you that are interested in this, I think that there's a lot to enjoy here. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. Now, in terms of the dimensions, guys, just 36mm in diameter, 11mm thick, but that is including that crystal, which does sit proud of the case. And you can see there's some beautiful contouring going on with this case that definitely is in line with what you would expect to see from RZE. Now, this also, for those of you that are not into this particular colorway, just know that there are also uncoated variations that are going to have, I shouldn't say uncoated, they're just not Cerakoted. They're actually going to have their traditional DLC coat, which is fantastic and gives them the that extra hardness that they already have, except you're going to be able to see titanium versus here it's fully coated. But this fully coated look, again, gives me definitely a lot more tactical vibes when I look at it. And again, a lot more reminiscent of my gear of my time serving in the Marine Corps. And, this just feels more like a true piece of tactical kit. Now, This uses grade 2 titanium with that Cerakote finish. It has a 43 millimeter lug to lug. So again, super compact, guys. Maybe a little too compact for some wrists, but again, not every wrist is as big as mine. So I'm happy to share this one with you guys. When it comes to the crystal, it's a flat sapphire, but it does have an inner anti-reflective coating. You get a screw down crown. This is black DLC coated, and it goes, of course, with the black coated hardware on that nylon strap. The crown is signed and screw down, which is great because this is quartz, so you're going to pretty much set it and forget it. So I'm glad they went with a screw down crown. The movement inside is actually a Quartz Miota Solar Caliber 2070, and it's accurate to plus or minus 20 seconds per month. So if you think that tolerance sounds big, just remember there are watches that are plus or minus 20 seconds per day in the mechanical realm. So doing that in a month, I think, is definitely good to go. Also, you're going to get a 4-month power reserve on a full charge. And if I hold this at an angle, you'll be able to see there almost little slivers of the rehat are actually where they keep that solar cell. So I think that's really cool, and it actually charges really, really fast, and it holds a charge pretty long. 4 months of power reserve on a full charge. So you could do, basically once you get it fully charged, you keep it in a drawer for 4 months, and as long as it's not more than 4 months, typically, you should be good to go to whip it back out and just throw it on the wrist, and it'll be keeping relatively good time, plus or minus 20 seconds, again, per month. The case back, although you can't really see it here, is actually black coated, pretty standard, pretty sterile, solid, obviously, screw down, but it looks good, right? It fits with the theme of the watch, and I dig that. Getting into the dial here, matte brown dial with a printed index and painted hands, and that printed index on the hours in particular, look at that. It's like almost 3D. Like, I'm almost hesitant. I don't want to call these Lume blocks, but I mean, they are right the borderline right there. Like you could call them, that's how thickly applied the Lume is. And the Lume is Swiss Superluminova. Again, that is very thickly and 3D applied, and it does glow green. In terms of the water resistance, guys, 100 meters of water resistance or 330 feet, 10 atmospheres, however you want to read that. That's outstanding, and you do get a screw-down crown, so it's also confidence-inspiring. The lug width here is probably the only real drawback for me, which is it's an 18 millimeter lug, which is proportional for the watch itself. Yes, like, fair enough, and from a tactical perspective, 18 millimeters non-tapering is probably going to be more comfortable on most wrists. It does have this 18 millimeter double pass nylon NATO style strap with that DLC coated titanium hardware, and this is all fully milled. I will say the finger on this pin buckle is very thin. So that's a little concerning. I haven't had any issues with it yet, and I know that they test their stuff pretty well. So, I mean, it could just be, me overthinking things. That unfortunately doesn't feel quite as overbuilt as the rest of the case. But I will say, with how thin it is, if you wanted to use this for some level of, you wouldn't want to pry with this because I would imagine they would snap. Because, although titanium is very strong, it doesn't have as much flex in it as something like, let's say, steel. So what ends up happening is it can be ultimately more brittle, even though that it's harder. But with that coating on there, I'm not sure how that affects it. This hasn't, I haven't had any reasons to think that it could break. I would imagine it might tear through this high quality nylon, tubular nylon before this snaps. But that is a thought that I had when I looked at that, was that looks a little thin. Again, I could be wrong. I would prefer something a little thicker, but, the fact that they're able to even manufacture something this precise is impressive. So I'll leave it on that note. But everything is pretty standard in terms of the layout here. They didn't reinvent the wheel. It is a NATO style strap. There's no floating keepers or anything like that. Everything is very standardized. But with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this actually wears surprisingly well. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, of course, it is a non-tapering strap, and you do have the hardware points there on the strap that do help elongate the overall footprint. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, there's going to be a fair amount of perspective distortion, and some of you might think, oh, that actually looks quite nice. But again, that is just artificially and making the watch look quite large, which is, I think, another key reason why smaller watches are so popular on Instagram, because they're much easier to take pictures of with your phone. And when they look larger, they never look overly large, right? But if I keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here, you guys are going to get a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And again, surprisingly well for my wrist, definitely more on just the pure function side, right? Wanting to be small, wanting to be out of the way. It works, absolutely. And if I was wearing, long sleeve camis, out in the field with my sleeves down, this would be perfect to slide underneath that cuff. And I mean, color wise, everything. This is really a great tactical piece. So if you're looking for that really high level of authenticity and functionality, I think this is pretty up there, right? I mean, what's going to really compete with something like this? Now, in terms of like a daily wear or something to just wear kind of passively, as you would wear a normal watch, right? Or any everyday type of watch. Some of you might find this undersized. Again, if you have a smaller wrist, some of you will be thrilled about this. But for me, at my slightly larger than average 7.5-inch wrist size, even though my wrist is, as you can see, it's pretty tall and round. It's not flat and wide and super accommodating, so it's not like I can pull off just much bigger watches super easily. It still feels just a hair undersized for me. But again, from a functional standpoint, as a tool watch, it's absolutely, might even be chef's kiss in terms of the sizing, right? You wouldn't want your kit overpowering what you actually are using your hands for, right? Which in a tactical situation, regardless of your weapon, close quarters or long range, I mean, you're going to want to feel pretty free with your hands. And something like this that you can really put on and almost forget about, is really quite perfect for that type of use case. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, look at that Lume. I wasn't kidding when I said that stuff was thickly applied. Check that out. Very, very nice, guys. And, with its more petite size, even with as potent as this Lume is, the nice thing is you don't necessarily have to worry about it giving away your position, because it is, relatively limited, right? But still ultimately legible. Great orientation, especially considering that you can just see the numerals just spelled out there. But one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because it's going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you can find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice with these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, guys. And you can see there is a beautifully high level of clarity and legibility when it comes to this dial. Beautifully balanced. I love the pop, and you can see high contrast, still high contrast. Even if you try to wash it out a bit with the light here, it's still very legible and very readable. And you can even see that really cool solar cell along the rehaut, which I think is just so slick, so smart, and well done. And this thing's cool, guys. I dig it. Again, it's not something I would probably wear every day, but in terms of like a camp watch, a watch to, actually go take when you are wanting not just to get wrist shots of something when you're out on the trail, you're actually going to use it for timekeeping, and it's something you're going to want to be able to depend and rely on. Something like this is really well suited for those types of functional tasks. So, I can't really be too against it. Unfortunately, my wrist is too large for something like this, but it doesn't mean that your wrist is too large. So, hey, why not? So with that said, guys, let's go ahead, get the lights back going here. And now we'll touch on some closing thoughts. This wears surprisingly well. All right. Okay, decent. on my 7.5-inch wrist, which is again a little bit on the larger side of average. It would definitely work better for me personally with 20mm lugs. I would like that. I would think it would make it a lot more wearable. Or maybe if they did like a stepped like accordion or wave style of rubber strap that's going to have a little flare on it, I think that would also work really well in terms of making it just feel a little bit larger for larger wrists without making it feel oversized for smaller wrists. So at the end of the day, though, as much as I would maybe tweak this to make it a little bit larger here or there, it's still very close to those minimalist Timex field watches I used to frequently wear during my time as an active duty U.S. Marine. So again, I can't really complain. Like, I understand why this watch is the way that it is, and I have to understand then that every single product is marketed directly at me, and I know that's tough as a watch fan. And you know, you guys have seen it in the whether they be comments on Instagram or YouTube. Everybody thinks every product should be for them or marketed for them, and if it's not, then it's a failure of the brand. But I will tell you, I don't buy every single watch that's released, so they probably shouldn't market everything towards me directly. In terms of model variants, guys, this is also available again without Cerakote, with a standard UltraHex hardened coating. So definitely check the site links for current options and availability. I think this is actually a really cool model, and I've even already received a couple of requests on, you know, when I'm going to be able to get my hands on one so I can do a video. So clearly there's demand for this. In terms of comparable models, I'm not huge into Quartz, so I'll let you tell me which models you find most comparable in the comments below. I do know that Hamilton recently released a Quartz field watch, which was, hey, good for them. But knowing Hamilton, I feel like without even looking up the details on it, that this was probably going to outspec it in many, many ways. And yeah, so that is what it is. Micro brands are great at that, right? Really over delivering. Now, in terms of the bottom line, guys, the Urbanist really surprised me. You know, I like the compact size, but do wish it did have 20mm lugs. You know, the interesting use of this particular solar movement, which enables you to use a solid dial, also adds a lot of charm to this tough little grab and go adventure piece. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.